In this video, I'm going to go over how you can set up ChatGPT Actions and subsequently MCP so that you can effectively use this new tool. Hi, my name's Jacob. I do AI automations, and today I wanted to do a deep dive on this new protocol that's being introduced and widely accepted in the LLM community. If you are not familiar with Model Context Protocol, it is a really cool protocol that's being rolled out so that you can interface with the data sources in the same and consistent format. ChatGPT Actions has been around for quite some time, and it did not get as much love as it should have, in my humble opinion. But with MCP, you can have the same developers create one protocol for LLMs of any size talk to a database. So if there are MCP servers out there, I'll leave a link to a good resource that has the compatibilities for all the GitHub projects that are getting spawned. But Notion has one, for instance, and you can use a Claude desktop and set up a local MCP server so that you can talk to the Notion database that you want. It's a really cool feature, but if you don't want to go through all that hassle of setting up an MCP server and you don't want to set one up on the cloud, which I totally get, you can use ChatGPT Actions. So in here, I've got the Content GPT. This is one that I put up and will demo in this video. This is the ecosystem that I'm using to create new newsletter ideas and social media content ideas. I like to use ChatGPT for ideation, Google search, the full shebang, and having a centralized location for me to ideate and then come up with the different drafts, the hooks, and content pieces. It is a really inspiring way for me to do that. So if you have a similar process where you're talking to the model and you just want it to be a really seamless process, then I think this would be a good project to demo for yourself. If not, then there are a couple of different ways that you can leverage this data with like data analysis and all of that. But definitely drop your ideas in the comment section so you can inspire others with your creativity. Off to the side, I have my instructions put in place. Virtual assistants going to create and search content ideas, keep the content pieces unique, fresh, and relevant to the discussions around data, AI, automation. I like to center the conversation around productivity, but there are several ways you can leverage AI and like creativity. And then I like to have a couple of checks down here. Before we add an idea, ask for confirmation, show me the title, show me what platform you want to send it to. And on top of that, the default database ID. I want that to be very explicit. So I'll demo a couple of the different tools that we have for this. We have conversation starters. I want it to find holes in our content so that we can have better representation on those specific topics. I want to make sure that we are searching for the correct pieces online for our target audience so we can add new ideas. And then I want to grade existing pieces of content. To do all of this, previously you'd have to upload your own knowledge files. You can go to Notion right here. This is my database. What I would do is I could share or export this, and then I take that CSV file and then upload it into here. It would kind of get the job done. There's some missing content, it doesn't have the full page, and it's really time consuming. Like at that point, you might as well just do it yourself. So with this system in place, it at least speeds up the process a little bit. I have web search and Canvas turned on, but depending on your mileage, you might not need these, and you might actually benefit from image generation and code interpreter if that suits your fancy. But this is where the real meat and potatoes is for this video, and that's going to be on the Actions file. For the Actions file, if you are familiar with how this is structured, then this will be a cakewalk. If this is daunting and intimidating looking, do not worry. I will walk through how this is set up for Notion. And my guiding advice is use ChatGPT to create your own ChatGPT. So there are a couple of examples that I'll give you, for accessing like the weather, example.com. All this is doing is just describing how ChatGPT should use tools. All tools are API calls. So what you'll see down here, this is an API call that we'll make to Notion, and it's going to grab all of the recent blog ideas. The description says so, but down here, this is the request body that it needs to send over to Notion in order for it to access that data. So down here, if you look real close, you can see that we have a created time. We're going to sort by that created time, and then we're going to only pull in 10 things. So it's going to be of type integer. It's going to shove whatever data it thinks should fit in there, but that default value is going to be 10. should this fail, and this does fail frequently, and I'll demo that. So we have get recent ideas down here. That's going to match this path up here, description, operation ID, all that good stuff. So that's there. I'm going to run test, let it run in the side. When you talk to it in the normal chats, it'll usually right here prompt if it wants to talk to API Notion. Sometimes it'll do it before prompting if it's okay, and that's generally, it's something you can work past. I know with MCP, like that is a requirement to grab all of that information and the approvals before you make the requests. But you can see AI isn't the answer, context is, automation blueprint, and then a couple of other entries. Those were that top 5 despite the default being 10. And then when we go to the media content from today, we have 2 different posts, and then those are the different things right here. So I'm going to open this bad boy up. At the top, which you cannot see, is going to be that ID. If I scroll all the way down right here, I'll paste in, this is the ID for this page. I'll get rid of that top section right there. And then I want to test out the get page blocks. So I'm going to hit test. What it should do is it prompt me to see if it can get that correct page, but it's referencing a different page altogether. This is one limitation too. So I'm just going to tell it what page to retrieve. And then this is that automation blueprint. So if I go back here, this is where I copied it. Now I can read in all that data. Can you summarize this page for me? And then it'll just go through a quick, concise summary. So that is a really good functionality. Then with this create blog post idea, it'll go through, prompt me, and then it can add stuff into the mix. So overall, it's a really comprehensive system for getting everything into Notion. A couple of the caveats I've noticed is with the paths, you can only have one path, even if your methods are different, even if you name things differently. So that is one of the limitations with this. You can set up the different paths and have the ad page look a little bit different. And I did try that in an earlier adaptation. It did work, but what was happening is the context was being misconstrued. And as you can see from this demo up here, it did not prompt me for the page that I wanted to talk about. It just used the most recent one. So with this, the big takeaway with Actions and MCP for that matter is context is going to be king, and trying to reduce the width of your tools and make them as narrow as possible, you will get the best mileage out of that. So before messing with this, I'll put the source code for the MCP server on Notion. There are a couple of ways you can interact with databases, but when you look at the developer docs for Notion, this is not specified. It just leaves database ID and then query. If you're looking for a specific page within a specific database, this is going to be really difficult to do when you have a ton of databases and a ton of pages within those databases, because there's just a lot of IDs out there. And keeping the head on ChatGPT or Claude to only look for those specific IDs that you're talking about gets difficult as you have longer conversations, there's more data, and that context window just gets flooded. So the guiding principles I'll give for this video is take the MCP versions, or take the server files that you get from MCP, chuck them into your environment, and then trim away as much as possible. And then with the functions that are left, is there a way that you can specifically create versions of those so that can interact with blog posts, interact with newsletters, interact with social media? You know, there's a lot of different ways that you can set this up for success. So that's my show and tell. I want to actually go through how to get this put together. What you'll need is a Notion database, preferably with the paid plan. I'm not too sure if you can do the integrations without that. Do fact check me in the comment section. This also applies if you're using a different data source, but you're going to have to do different steps to really get the most out of that data source. I'll do the broad steps first, just so that you can apply that with whatever technology you want to use. But for this specifically, we'll use Notion and hook it into ChatGPT. Up at the top, you'll see that we have a custom GPT put together called Task Tracker. And what I'm actually using right now is the Actions GPT. It's a really long thing. I'll condense this and share it in the description just so you can kind of go through some of the pain points. Long story short, this is just making tools that we can use for ChatGPT to interact with Notion. So to get this ready to go, what we're going to need is a connection. That connection is basically a security piece of information just to validate that we can have the permissions to talk to the right data. When we go to our Notion board, you'll see that we have a couple of different things. I just made this really quick with the Notion AI to put in a couple of tasks. We have all tasks, by status, my tasks, all tasks. Again, I just wanted a table view, but you can see we have everything put together here. And then whatever styling or format you want to look at this, it doesn't matter. We still have that table view. What you'll want to do to maximize impact is get this into a clean format for ChatGPT to make instructions off of. And let me explain this. Over here, we have the Actions GPT. This is published by ChatGPT. I'll leave a link to this as well so you can use it. I went really generic and just said create actions for Notion task board. So down here, it's going to do the absolute best it can. It's using the database's database ID query, which is the correct endpoint for Notion. It's going to use the pages, and then it's a post request to add a new task to that. So it's going to create a new page in the database. And then for the pages ID, this is going to update since we're doing a patch request. So you can see we have 3 different actions, pretty substantial, I would say, and they're all going to modify the properties components of that task board. So if you recall from earlier, I could not update the individual page items just because it's using block children and that's a whole thing. But for this task tracker, everything's being stored at the top level. When you look in here, nothing is really happening. So all of this cool stuff is happening up at the top. This makes life a lot easier working with Notion. If you're using rows in Google Sheets, if you're going to use ClickUp or anything along those lines where you just have that top level data, it's much easier to work with. But if you need to have that, nested content, then there are a couple of strategies to use. We won't be going over those in this video. If you want to see how that works, do let me know. I do want to spend some time to try and crack that code. But from here within the Actions GPT, you can copy this in and then paste it into the task tracker. So I'm going to get the edit GPT config. You got to click it twice on sometimes. And we're in this configuration. To get access to custom GPTs, you will need a paid license on ChatGPT. And then from here, we'll click on the actions. And this is where you copy paste that YAML that gets created. And then the YAML is just this thing up at the top. YAML. I'll get rid of that. Copy this, go to the top, paste that in, and then you can see we have a couple of errors. So over here, like it's missing in the context and the components, the schemas subsection is not an object. Down here, there's some errors, and overall, it's just not doing what I want it to do. So I need it to get my database specifically, and I don't want it talking to another thing in Notion. This is just for task tracking. So to get this specifically geared in towards my context, what I do is I'll create an integrations. I'll paste the link to this as well. This is notion.so/profile/integrations. What you'll do is you'll create a new integration with read and write capabilities, and then I can share access to this connection into that integration. So then when I go to the task tracker, I'll go over here, connections, and then down here you can see that make connection has all the access in the world. So in here, you can click into there, get your API key. It is a secret piece of info, so keep your API key private. I would strongly discourage sharing it with others unless you trust them. And then on a tool like Postman, you can go through and then make that API request. Down here in this output is all of the context that is within that database. So from there, you can go into your Actions GPT and then paste that in. What it's going to do is it's going to create a much more precise YAML. And from here, I'll go back into the table. I'll hit enter, and we're still running into issues. This is quite normal. And honestly, I'll zoom through this, but taking screenshots, having it updates, more screenshots, corrected, fixed, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of stuff that it's just not doing. And to give you a little bit of sanity check, at here with the full context, this is where it was working. But then there was a semantic error. It was not able to make that API request because it didn't include the Notion version header. So when you're going through, and I'll show you what that does. All right, let me copy this. It's saying to replace the components. Good to go. It's going to run into some errors. Oh, and then I did not update this, I don't think. Here, let's try that. And then in component section schema. And then we will go all the way down here, right over there. So this is what it was previously. The errors go away, and we have the API key hooked up. When I hit the test button, we'll run into this issue. So in this, we don't get the actual printouts, and that's because the API key is missing. So what we'll do is we'll just add that API key in here. I'm going to skip past this portion just so we keep my API key safe. So now that I got my API key loaded up in here, which that does happen on occasion, it'll go through. Task tracker wants to talk to API Notion. Yes, go ahead. And then it's going to have that failed outbound call. And the printout is the Notion version header. It failed during the validation. This is just because we're not passing it in. Go back to the actions script. Keep going back and forth. It took a little bit of time just getting it to do its thing. But the secret sauce here is once it figured out what it needed to do, I just asked it to output the entire file all over again. So what I'll do is get rid of this stuff right here. Paste in the accepted response. It has that API key from earlier. When I hit test, it'll run through, ask me for permission. We receive that response, and then now we have public release notes, update help center FAQ, improve website copy. When we go back to here, that's accurate. So overall, really awesome system. Don't forget to update your stuff. And then we can add a card just to test it out. We'll hit confirm. New task, review customer feedback. This link is going to take us to the review customer feedback link. That's awesome. And then let's update the task card. So right now we're not giving it a whole lot of instruction, and you can see it's just going to do it just to test it out. So this is really going to go back to the prompting and the instructions, just really making sure that you get everything put together. So I got it to do everything that I wanted to do. One of the issues that was popping up with the pages update is going to be on that request body. And I'll show really quickly up at the top. You can see down here on that request body, there's not a whole lot of guidance on how it should create that properties object. And at this stage, we're really setting this endpoint up for failure just because we're not telling it what to do. Like imagine like if we want it all the way up to the top right here, this is to create a page, and you can see we have the database ID already. Like this is, the defaults. We have the properties, we have description, priority, status, and we have different objects in here and what's to put in for each of these. So right here, there's so much data to use. But then when you look at this one right here, the patch, we're just assuming that the AI is going to just get it. And for right now, we don't necessarily have that capability. When you go through, we get the update card in action. This, whenever you use this specifically, you'd get a 200 response from Notion, which means it worked successfully. But then you check into here, and this is not updated. It's still not started. And then the model's like, no, 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 I'm pretty sure it's updated, and you keep going back and forth, and it's just not working. So with all that being said, that is a limitation. You can have another conversation with ChatGPT. It's going to try and do some reasoning. It gets it right here where this is the request body, and it says it looks correct, but it's the bare minimum. Like, you're right there. So we have this, and then we just go through, creates the next version of this, and then whenever I test this bad boy out, then it's going to do its thing. So I did make a modification a little bit on this side right here. So don't include properties if they're empty. This is going to be something specific on that API endpoint for Notion. Whenever you do like a patch request, if the data isn't there, then it's not going to update. So when it comes to the Notion endpoints, if we don't give it some sort of data value, it's not going to replace whatever's in there. Then if the model wants to create different stuff for like priority, even though we don't create the priority, we're just helping it not to hallucinate data. Like, we're not telling it to adjust the priority. We're not telling it to do anything. We're just going to tell it to update the status. So I'm going to say, can you update this card to done one more time? It worked before. I'm leaving that there just because this model, it feels self-aware. It'll look at that data and be like, wait a second. I just do that just to give it a little bit more reinforcement that it's okay. It's going to prompt me if it's okay. I'll hit the confirm button and then mark it as done. I go over here and then you can see that card is marked as done. So this is review customer feedback, done. We're good there. So what I want to do too is we have a couple of different categories. Let's, for fun, can you also update the effort to the highest level available? So I don't really know what that is. I'm just going to let it figure it out. And it should be able to figure it out. So effort got updated to large, small, medium, large. It's using probably the t-shirt system, but right there, we're good to go. And then I could also ask, can you tell me what the description is on that page? And this is just to see the functionality, updated task description for progress tracking. Cool. All that is working. So as you can see, it's really straightforward to talk to the model. If you give it the right context, you set it up so that the API keys are in place, you share access. If you do all of these steps and you're walking it through with Actions GPT, it's a relatively straightforward ecosystem. It's not going to be plug and play. This still requires a lot of configuration, but we've come such a very far way with this technology that you can use it to help create more AI instances, which is absolutely mind-boggling. So I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments to see how you would want to extend this out, if there's a broader ecosystem or maybe different technologies you'd like to see hooked up to this. This is definitely something I would recommend you explore at the very least. MCP is going to get way better. There's going to be support for MCP on the ChatGPT website coming up pretty soon. There's a lot of different ways to leverage artificial intelligence to make your productivity skyrocket, or at the very least have some fun. Hopefully this was educational, informative, or at the very least entertaining. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you soon.